All right. Happy Sunday, beautiful people. We are live here again today on this beautiful Sunday. I feel like a Baptist preacher. So it's Women's History Month. Her story is probably a more politically correct way of saying it. And I'm super duper excited to have on therapist Mr. Machel Hunt. I have seen his work. He's going to be tremendous, tremendous, tremendous. I hope some of you got an opportunity to listen in on the podcast, but I can't wait to bring him on and we're going to talk more. So, again, this is a grown and sexy conversation. So, if you listened in, you know that this is a grown and sexy podcast today or in a grown and sexy live stream today. But first, you know how it goes. We're going to go to the commercial. All right. All right. So, like I said, today is a conversation on intimacy. I wanted to call it something else, but you know how social media rules go. You will be flagged. You will be taken down with certain comments, with certain titles. So, we want to keep it grown and professional, like the doctor should be. So yes, so that's the title is a conversation on intimacy. I can't say enough of good things about this brother, Mr. Machel Hunt. I'll be honest, by the way, his accent is absolutely amazing. I wish that I could imitate it myself. Uh, this is a picture of this guy. Let's bring it up, Mr. Hunt. So he is a psychosexual therapist and an accredited relationship counselor with over 16 years of experience. I'll tell you, he doesn't look like he's been in this for 16 years. I look like I've been into it for 6 years. Born and raised in London, England, Michelle is an international trainer, a workshop facilitator, development consultant, and sought after public speaker. He holds a bachelor's degree in psychology from the University of Greenwich. I hope I said that right. I'm country. In London, and a master's of science in counseling psychology from Westminster University in London, and a postgraduate master's in relationship counseling and psychosexual therapy from the Institute of Sexuality and Human Relations, as well as licenses and accreditations. He has spoken all over. So he does talks about sexual health and well-being, ladies who prep, and a statewide initiative across Georgia, and MBT Talks in Atlanta. He is a well sought after speaker for CBS 360, V103, Power 97, Fox News, and Sirius XM. I mean, as you see, I had to read it because I'm getting old. So I can't help but be excited about the conversation. So I'm going to bring him in. I'm going to be honest. Today we had to go back to Skype last minute, and I wanted to go to the other thing. But, anyways, we'll talk and we'll have you on. Okay? So hopefully uh, we're up. Let's see. Where are we at? Here. You know, I'm pushing it today. I am really pushing the show today. Oh no, you know, Wesley, you clicked the wrong thing. All right, so maybe I don't hear you, Michelle, but maybe everybody else hears you. Hold up one second. Let's see if this is gets no for me. Let me see if it gets better for me. Uh, so we have our audio and video and we bring it in by a two channel, but I'm gonna have to bring it in, I think, this way. Hold up. Are you there, Michelle?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me now?
Okay, I can hear
Okay.
you.
Okay.
I
All
heard
right.
I heard everything you said. Thank you so much for that wonderful, wonderful introduction. It's amazing.
Well, I mean, I can't but speak your praises because you have done some amazing stuff. And thank you for taking time out of your Sunday to, come on and talk. I have some people who are really, really excited about you being on. So tell
Oh, that's
people about
fantastic.
you. What do you do and how you got involved in this?
Oh, wow. Okay, so I heard you say I don't look like I've been doing this for 16 years, but I have actually been doing it for a little bit longer than 16 years if you think about all the training that I did. So I've been really interested in the way the mind works for a really, really long time. So, ever since I was a child, I was really curious about why people do the things they do, how they do it, how they get to, making the decisions they make. So that kind of really brought me into psychology. When I did my first degree, and then from that, I wanted to explore sexuality a lot more. And I feel like, as humans, are the very nature of how we begin to being is mostly through sex. I mean, now in 2020, there's all different types of ways that we can conceive, but predominantly we're mostly conceived through sex. So I think that kind of intrinsic connection to sex was something that really intrigued me in a way where I went to study that more and engaged with more people on that level. So then I decided I went to be a sex therapist. And my brand is mostly to do with how the psychology of sex influences the behavior of sex. That's why I'm a psychosexual mostly. I see a lot of clients who have issues around sexuality, sexual compulsive disorders, couple who has issues around, kind of working through sexual issues, relationship concerns. I do some sex coaching, I do tantric coaching, and I do quite a lot around helping people to be more okay with their sexuality, whatever that looks like for them. So just being confident, and comfortable with their this kind of sex that they're having and the kind of sex they want to be having. So that's, mostly. I can go on more, but I know we want to get to the topic of intimacy, which is one of my favorite topics. Yeah, that's it.
That's dope. And one of the things that's really, 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 really amazing to me is um, how uncomfortable we are still today with sex, in
Absolutely.
the conversation about sex. So, and my mother, who's also a licensed social worker, wants to be on the
Right.
call, but this is not a call for mom today. I'm not
I mean,
quite.
there's some moms who need to be on the call. you
This
know, I
mom, this
not
mom
that
probably
mom.
does, but not
Right.
this one. Not today.
Right.
Not
Not
today,
today.
mom. I'm sorry. So
I hope
yeah,
she'll
this
forgive
call is
you.
not for her. I hope so too, because I just hung up on her face for trying to Skype.
Okay.
So yeah, so it's really interesting that we are still so sensitive about the conversation of sex. And I think my mother called in because she knows I love to use her as
Example.
an example.
Right.
Because I was, I it was definitely a piece of work for me to be comfortable with sex and sexuality.
Mm,
I come from a very like religious home, and sex isn't something that you have a conversation about. Um, and so I was left to like figure out a lot of things on my own, and I think a lot of people are still doing that. So let me change the view of that. Okay, perfect. So that's a little bit better. So I think that people are still in that vein. Is as much as we think that we are progressed, I think that we just have more visibility of stuff, but people are still not comfortable with conversations about sex and sexuality, um,
absolutely.
and getting those needs
Absolutely.
met.
I couldn't
So
agree with you more. And just before you go on, I just want to say something about people being comfortable with even having conversations. So many people are more comfortable with, the act of sex when it's closed off from, others, that they never really want to have conversations about it. And a lot of times, because we're not having conversations about sex and sexuality and intimacy, we don't always get what we want. We don't always get what we desire from the person that we're engaging with, because those conversations aren't being said. And there's still so much discomfort around, what sex means, and how you can engage in it and what you say about it. And I feel that because we're not having those kinds of conversations, but we see that sex is visible in so many different atmospheres. On social media, sex is everywhere. There's all types of apps that you can engage with on a, very personal level. But the conversation still isn't being had. And I think that's a huge gap where my work fits in. And I'm sure to some extent your work fits in as well. So I'm really happy that we're having this platform where we can actually be open about what it means to be intimate.
right, right. So let's start. My mother's gonna call again. She's watching the show. Oh,
Hey,
jeez.
mom.
No, absolutely not. Don't say hey, mom. So I'll be honest. So I had
Hmm.
posed a question in some private groups of mine, and one question that really, really stumped me. And as a relationship therapist, um, we have different schools of thought as a therapist, and I'm cognitive behavioral therapist. For those who
Right.
don't know, um, and one of the questions just came from a viewer about the feelings that so the wife, or I don't know, she stated that her boyfriend or
Hmm.
her husband is not having sex with her. They've been together for 2 years, was the situation. There are no kids between them. She wants to marry him. She feels like they both equally love one another,
Okay.
but they have the sex has stopped, and he feels well. I mean, he didn't respond, so I don't know how he really feels. But that was the question. Like, she is no longer having sex with her husband or her boyfriend, and they watch porn together, which was even
Okay.
more interesting part of that. A part of that statement, and I was like, "What do you think about that?" Because I'm like, I
Okay.
don't know, girl.
I mean, it's interesting because I see a lot of that in my clinic. Where the sexual libido or the sex drive is either gone from both parties, or one of the partners. And I think, again, intimacy is more than just sex. It's more than just having sexual intercourse. It's more than penetration. It's more than oral pleasures. But I would say to that, that partner of, if she wants to engage in sex and she wants to have a sexual encounter with him, and he doesn't, then that should be a conversation, because there might be some things that are going on for him that he's not able to express. It could be that he has erectile difficulties, for one. That, a lot of times it's difficult for men to even admit and acknowledge that they have erectile difficulties. It could be that there is, although there might be love between them, there is no passion, there is no sexual excitement. So that's something that they could work on to build a sexual excitement and engage more on a very sexual, intimate level, rather than just saying we love each other, we're together for 2 years, we watch porn together. And the third thing I would say is, the compatibility. You being compatible with someone in the beginning of a relationship doesn't ensure that that compatibility is going to be there throughout the relationship. So you constantly have to keep checking in. Are we still on the same page? Are we still needing the same things from each other? Are we still wanting the same things? Do we still like the same things that we did when we initially say, let's get into a relationship? So those three factors I would pose to her, to contemplate, to think about, and also to engage with him. A lot of times, what I find in relationships, that people will talk about their relationships to everyone else except the person they're in a relationship with. And that's the person who you need to be having a conversation with. That's your primary area of concern, of venting, of questions. Speak to him. What's going on? How's he feeling? Why does he not want to have sex? And once those questions get answered, then you'll be in a much better position. And and oftentimes it could be rectified, sometimes it can't be, and that's when you realize you have to move on.
Mm. So the moving on though, when you were in love, we played. You
Hmm.
know, I played some of the women of that I have a fascination with for him Women's History Month that I
Right.
consider as divas, and we know women truly. I won't say work hard at relationships, but their view about breaking up is very different than men's view of breaking up.
Right.
How do you go from, how would you suggest and how do you talk to female clients and patients about something like that, about saying you're a very sexual being and your sex and sexuality is just as important as his, if even in a relationship, if that shouldn't be one of those things you just say, you know what, maybe it's me and I'm the problem.
So I think the first thing I would say is making sure that that woman recognizes that her sexuality is important. Because I think we live in a culture, even with ultra feminism, and the feminist movement, there's still a sense that women's sexuality it shouldn't be on display. It shouldn't be, at the forefront of your mind. That's something that men do, or the types of women that have sexuality at the forefront of their minds. They're not like you. They're different types of women. And, those have all types of connotations that come along with it. So I think the first thing is to get her to acknowledge that sexuality is as important to her as it should be to anyone else. So not to minimize that part of herself. And then once we recognize that and she acknowledges that, is to build the communication with her partner. So rather than saying, oh, well, I need sex, he's not giving it to me, so I'm going to move on. In a relationship, it takes a lot more than that. So communication is going to be key to that relationship. And a lot of times it's difficult to have those kinds of communication if you don't believe that you're worth those conversations. If you don't believe that your sexuality is important enough to have a discussion about, then oftentimes people suffer in silence, I find, where they don't say what they want. They don't speak up about their needs and their passions and their fantasies, um, which is really important for women. It's very important that women don't lose sight of that because they are more concerned with being a wife and being a mother and being a full all around woman. Sexuality is very important, and I think once we get that down and she recognizes that, now if the communication between her partner isn't good, then that's something we obviously want to work on. I don't think sort of like just giving up because you're not getting the kind of sex that you want is realistic. Even though it's available and it's, again, you can go on any app and have a hookup, but that's not the most meaningful thing for a lot of people. So I would say have communication, find out where your partner is at. Again, go back to, are we on the same page? If my libido is at 10 and yours is at 5, then clearly we're not going to be able to satisfy each
Mm.
other. If I want to have sex 5 times a week and you're happy with having sex once a month, then we're obviously not on the same page. And then that sex could be anything from full blown break your back intercourse to, light foreplay after work on a Wednesday evening. So I think, you have to be compatible, and I cannot stress that enough with sexuality. If you're not compatible with your partner, it doesn't matter how much you love them, it doesn't matter how great they are with the kids, it doesn't matter how good they are as a provider. If you're sexually not compatible, you're never going to be on the same page. And that's
Mm.
always going to be a conflict, and it's going to lead to all sorts of resentment, infidelity, bringing other people in the relationship, all that's going to be at risk if you're
Mm-hmm.
not
Mm-hmm.
compatible sexually with your partner.
Do, do you think your patients and your clients and people that you
Mm-hmm.
interact with find it, women, as it relates to women
Mm-hmm.
or even men? Because let's be honest, I mean, people in all different kinds of relationships today. find it weird when a man is not incredibly or hypersexual or a very sexual being. Do you think that that's still a thing in 2020 or no?
Oh, absolutely. I think that's going to take another decade or two to change because we become accustomed to it. We become, and there's still these, social constructs of what masculinity and femininity is. Even though there's so many people who break barriers and cross those boundaries, the majority of us still have those social constructs in our minds.
Hmm.
This is what a man is, this is what a woman is, this is what masculinity is, this is what femininity is. And unfortunately, what goes along with that is that men are dogs. They are rampant. They have, their sex drive is high, and women are more demure. And if you're a bit too pushy, then
Hmm.
what's wrong with you?
Mm.
Kind of thing. So yeah,
Right.
there are still those social constructs. So I try in all my work, whether I'm dealing with groups or individuals or
Hmm.
couples, is to encourage people to explore their sexuality, explore what works for you. I do that a lot in my sex coaching sessions. It's what is your brand of sexuality? Don't worry about if you're male or female, or what your grandmother told you that a woman should be like, or what your mom raised you to be a woman. What is your sexuality? What makes you feel good? And if
Hmm.
what makes you feel good is a higher sex drive than your partner, then that's okay. He just needs to catch up. Or you need to come to an understanding that my sex drive is higher than yours. How can
Hmm.
we how can we manage that? How can we work together so that I don't feel like I'm getting the shorter end of the stick when it comes to sex or
Wow.
intimacy?
Right. Right. So I'm gonna go to the next question that I got from a viewer. So um, I got it from a viewer. So I'm looking at the phone. So you all think
Right.
that I'm looking at my phone just because I'm not. Um, so it's a married couple.
Hmm.
They're not watching porn, but he is depressed, or so he says. Odd to see that I am not alone. The conversation only goes so far. The nurse in me does think there is erectile dysfunction involved.
Okay.
Um, how do you have excitement if there's no intimacy at all anymore?
That's a great question.
It is, right?
That is an amazing question. It's a question that I've heard plenty of times.
Hmm.
Again, if you're in a relationship, there's certain expectations that come with being in a relationship. One of those expectations is a fulfillment of your sexual needs. Um, and the fulfillment is that it comes from your partner.
Hmm.
So if you're not having that kind of fulfillment or that kind of pleasure, then that somehow takes away that part of the excitement. So now you might still be able to go out and see a movie or have dinner, enjoy time with your friends, but the intimacy, it's not being met. You're not having that sort of expectation being met. So it's very hard to be excited at that point. So what I would suggest is go back to the beginning, go back to what it is that you fell in love with that person about, and take sex out of it. Because if sex was the only reason why you were attracted to that person, then that's obviously a very different type of relationship. And if that's what you were excited about in the beginning and it's no longer there, then ultimately the relationship needs to end. But if there were more things that attracted you for at the beginning, whether it's the way the person was, um, as a friend, how they treat people, the kind of fun that you have when you just go out and hang out, go back to that. Find excitement in those spaces and then use that to come back to the sex. So if what you were attracted to your partner with was just the fact that they made you laugh, you're out and you have this uncontrollable laughter, go back to that. And while you're in that space where you're engaging with them on a fun level, then that's when you begin to start thinking about, well, how can we turn this thing that we like, this excitement that we have, into the bedroom? How can we bring it into the bedroom? And there's lots of skills that I teach people to get the sex back. There's a
Hmm.
course that I run called How Do We Get Intimacy Back? And these are for couples just like the one that reach out to you,
Hmm.
that may
Hmm.
still be in a relationship. They might still be things about their partner that they're like, but they're lacking in the sex department. They're lacking in the intimacy. They're lacking in the kind of sexual excitement that they want. And that's something that I can teach. And unfortunately, we have such, and always just never a long enough time to
Right.
talk about sex and
Exactly.
intimacy. But yeah, so there's a few techniques that I would say, but first of all, I'd have to see if there was more to the relationship to begin
Mm,
with.
right.
Um,
That's
and I think when we talk about sex and intimacy, it always has to be contextualized
okay.
because what works for you in your relationship might not work for me in my relationship.
Mm,
You know,
right. Right. Wow. So I want to keep it on the viewers because 45 minutes goes so fast. I
it
try to
really
keep it
does.
psychotherapeutic hour. Another viewer says, I think my husband feels or boyfriend feels like he's less of a man as he stays at home, and I have a very successful career. How can that be fixed when reality, her partner will never financially match her, but now it is an issue. She also feels like she agrees. She thinks his libido is at a zero, like zero, like she bolded, like at zero.
Oh wow. Okay, that's a tough one
Mm,
because there's multiple layers going on here.
mhm,
Obviously, again, we live in a society that has these societal norms. So if the female is earning more than the male, then that's obviously putting him psychologically and socially at a disadvantage. That's not the norm for most people, at least
mhm,
what they see around them. So I think that is one layer that we would need to unpick. The second layer is his libido being at zero. Now that's really difficult for any man to admit to, and then for a wife or a girlfriend or a partner to actually recognize that and admit to it, that's a whole nother thing as well. So
mhm,
now he has to deal with him not feeling great about his sexuality, but then also his partner saying, you know, something's going on because this is not working. And you're at home all day. I need something when I get home, kind of thing.
mm,
So I
mm,
think that's going to be again communication, communication, communication. I cannot speak how important communication is when it comes to sexuality, intimacy. So have a conversation about what he feels is going on. Give him the opportunity to say what makes him feel less of a man, what
mhm,
makes him feel like he doesn't want to have sex. Again, low libido can be related to lots of different triggers and traumas. It could be stress. It
mhm,
could be lack of connection. It could be not being attracted to his partner anymore for various reasons. It could be that he's taking some medication that's impacting his erectile functioning. It could be, if there's any mental health issues going on there, then that would impact his libido as well. So there's lots of layers to that, but it starts with a communication. If they decide that they do want to work on it together and there's a consensus that they want to make the relationship stronger, then I would say, couples therapy or psychosexual therapy is always going to be your next step from that,
mm,
because there's lots of tools within psychosexual therapy that will be able to rectify and help men with low libido
mm.
or
Now,
couples who are dealing with low libido.
what are some things like when people aren't ready or don't have the
Mm.
means to be able to come in the therapeutic space that you think they could try uh,
At home,
as kind of like lay people, as we call them, but no one
right,
is lay people, right? That they can try at home if they're not in a place both emotionally where they're ready to come deal with it in therapy, or financially, whether that be related
right,
to health insurance, whether that be to geographic location, whether that be also to the fact, let's be honest, there are such a lack of African American, black therapists and mental health practitioners. Um, so the field is just not an incredibly diverse place.
right.
But as a society, we are a very diverse society. What are some things that you could think of that a layperson could try with their partner, that may try to get that thing back or try to get back with dealing with this sex and intimacy?
Okay. So there's two things. Before I answer your question, I just want to add something to what you just said.
Go ahead.
The lack of diversity in mental health is startling for one, but when it comes to sexuality, it's even more, lacking in diversity.
Hmm.
So I think when you have a sexual issue, if you have a mental health issue, there's plenty of people that you can go to. If you add sexual issues onto that, then it limits where you can go for help and support.
Right.
And so I completely get that. And I'm one person who definitely believes, I'm a therapist who believes that therapy isn't for everyone. It doesn't work for everyone.
Hmm.
As great as I am as a therapist, I know that that's not going to work for everyone that wants it or might need it. So I would say things that you can do at home is communication again. That's always my number one. So
Hmm.
talk
Hmm.
about how you're feeling and develop a strategy. And I talk about this at my workshops as well. Develop a strategy where you're communicating without blame. You know, Oftentimes in relationships, we tend to blame the other person. This is why I'm like this. This is why I do this. You made me do this, which is why I'm this. So try to take those blaming quotes out when you talk to your partner and just really talk about how you're feeling and why you're feeling the way you do without blaming the other person. So that's first thing for communication. Secondly, is taking it back to the reasons why you like the person in the beginning. So it might be that you're attracted to them because they are ambitious, and he's a great father, or he's great, a family person, or he makes you feel secure, or she's a great cook. Whatever it is that attracted you to that person, then you need to focus on that. Rather than focus on the things that you don't like or isn't working so much. So, second thing is first thing communication. Second thing, go back to the things that you like and the things that are working. The third thing is to try couples massage. I like the idea of couples being erotic without being sexual. So even with a low libido, there's still areas of your body that may be sensitive to touch, sensitive to feelings. I would introduce, soft play at home. So, maybe once, if you have children, once the kids are asleep, make sure you have a space that's comfortable and alone and quiet where you're not going to be disturbed, and begin to explore each other's body, not so much the sexual organs that we know about, which is penis and vagina or breast and nipples. But
Right. Right.
try playing around with someone's ear, the back of their neck, their spine, the back of their leg, their toes, their fingers, use feathers, use tissues, and just explore different areas of their body that may not be associated with come, let's have foreplay and let's have intercourse right now, because that you might not be there. um, so that's the third thing. And the fourth thing I would say is, get out of your normal routine. So, if we go back to the viewer that sent in that last question, you might be working all the time and he's at home. Let's do something different. Let's switch up. Let's take a day off from work. Let's do, rather than you being at home all day, let's go to the park. Let's go to a movie in the middle of the day, which is something you don't usually do, and just really trying to get out of the space of things that aren't working. Because what happens is you then get performance anxiety, which
Hmm.
develops over
Hmm.
time.
Right. Right.
So the more you think about the things that don't work, is the more it stops working. So I would, if you're not having therapy, I'd focus on all the things that are going good, and you can do that when you get out of your routine. So those are four tips that I would say to someone, that they could try, prior to coming in for any kind of mental health support or therapy.
Right. So another question, because we were so close. So another says, from Facebook. No, I was just texting. That I am very much in love with my partner.
Okay.
We've been together for 7 years. However, I find myself not really interested in having sex with him. But I find myself really sexually satisfied with other people, typically individuals that I don't know. Is this problematic, or is this something I should talk to him about? Wow.
So again, very common, more common than you might know. It happens a lot. So this is something I hear almost on a daily basis. Um, it could be problematic because
Daily. Wow. I'm
if
sorry.
if your partner is feeling that he feels like something's missing because you're not having sex with him and you're not sexually attracted to him anymore, then he might be doing something else outside of the relationship with other people. He might be feeling resentful because that part of the relationship isn't being satisfied. So while you're being satisfied by external sources, he's
Mm,
kind of wondering what's going on. So yes, you should definitely speak to him about it. Now, again, every relationship might be different. Maybe
mm-hmm.
they're in a relationship where it might turn volatile if that's discussed. So you really, whatever relationship you're in, you need to feel safe when having these kinds of conversations. Um, Also, I think if you're in a relationship where you're not satisfied with your partner, but you're satisfied with random or potentially anonymous relationships or hookups, then that might be slightly related to, a compulsive behavior. Um, so that's something that I would want to explore as well. Is like, how often are you having these, you know, encounters with people you don't know? Is it safe? Is it, I know you feel pleasure from it, but are you putting yourself at risk? Are you putting other people at risk? Those are some of the things that I would want to discuss. But firstly, conversation with your partner. If you're no longer sexually attracted to him, you need to figure out why you're no longer sexually attracted to him. What has changed with you or with him or with a relationship to cause that lack of attraction now? And then would you want to get it back? Some people are happy having sex outside of their relationship and don't necessarily need the relationship for that. So oftentimes I see couples who they have the security of being in a two-person household, and that's enough for them for the relationships. That's the purpose the relationship serves. And then they get their sexual excitement from others. So I would say if your relationship is at a place where you're both being satisfied, not having sexual engagement with each other, then no issues there. I would still think about being safe with when you're having kind of casual sex with people you don't know.
Right. But it's definitely a conversation that has to be had.
Has to be had. You both need to be on the same page. I think that's ultimately where you want to be. When it comes to sex and intimacy, the
Hmm.
best sexual encounters and the best types of intimacy are the ones where you're both on the same page. Or if you're in a polyamorous relationship, everyone involved is on the same page. When one person or both people or all parties involved are on different page, it's never going to be mutually gratifying for all people's involved. So I'd say get on the same page, figure out what's going on with him, figure out what's going on with you, and
Right.
then have a conversation
Right.
and move on from that.
Okay, awesome. Wow. So I can't really get to all of these questions because it's 5:43, and I'm trying to stick to this 45-minute psychotherapeutic hour. I really want to respect your time and I respect the time of others. So please tell people how they can reach out to you, talk about a little bit about your practice, plug yourself, all the great things
Oh
that you're
yes,
doing.
I love this plug. So again, I'm on my website is currently being it's in administration right now, so it should be up within a few days. But the website is sextherapy4u.com. You can find me on Twitter, Ultimate Sex Doc. You can find me on Instagram at Relationship and Sex Doc, and you can find me on Facebook at Therapy for You. Also, my email is always available, so I respond to emails very quickly. You can email me at machellhunt@gmail.com. Again, that's MACHELLHUNT@gmail.com. I'm always open to seeing new clients. I have group workshops. I have coaching workshops. I have one-to-one coaching sessions. I do tantric classes as well. I work with males, females, of all ages, of all genders, of all sexual orientation. And I am very much focused on providing everyone I see with a tailored accredited, um, tested process. So whatever background you're coming from, however you feel you got to where you are in terms of needing support and therapy, I want to be there to support that. I do a thorough assessment. So we talk about everything that's going on for you, everything that's brought you to this place. And then I do a tailored projection for therapy. Sometimes it might be that I might not be the right therapist for you and I would refer you on. And if I am the right therapist for you and you feel comfortable, then we can set up a plan for proceeding from that. But also, if you're on my Instagram page, I have a sexual recovery workshop, which is an 8-week workshop specifically tailored for men who may be experiencing sexual compulsive disorders. So I'd really love, we have a few spaces left on that. So please sign up if you feel like you need it. There's a group session and there's also individual sessions as well. Sometimes group don't always work for everyone. So I provided a one-to-one session for those. But yeah, I'd love to hear from you. Any feedback is always great. You can email me, text me, tweet me, Facebook me, and all of that. But yeah, this has been amazing, actually. Really,
Yes,
really
I'm
enjoyed
glad.
having the
Um,
conversation.
I got a text message. It was the question was, they don't live in Atlanta area. Are they still someone that can work with you?
Absolutely, absolutely. So if you send me an email, we can do telecounseling. I do video counseling as well as telephone consultations as well. So, and often I do a free complimentary 15-minute consultation. So any questions you have, as long as it fits in 15 minutes, we can do that and it's complimentary.
15.
So just
One
let you
five.
15,
Oh,
one
okay.
five. No, not the psychotherapeutic hour. This is just 1 5.
I was like
It's a one
50
time
minutes.
50, no, 15-minute consultation, just so you can ask any burning
Hmm.
questions you have and just kind of get an idea of what working with me would be like.
Okay.
So,
Awesome.
yeah.
Well, this has been, like you said, an amazing conversation. I cannot say enough how I've enjoyed this conversation. Um, so I really hope that you will come back. With
Absolutely. I'll
uh,
be happy to join you anytime. It's been great talking to you, and I think this platform is so well needed.
very, very, very much.
A lot of people who need help and support just find it incredibly difficult to
Hmm.
access for many different reasons. So having a platform where they can literally just switch on, whether it's YouTube or online anywhere, and get some sort of insight,
Right.
is always very important. So I appreciate you having this platform.
Right. Well, thank you so much, sir. You have an amazing Sunday, and I look
Thank
forward to
you.
talking with you again.
All right. Thank you. Take care.
You have a good one.
All right. Bye bye.
Okay, guys. Whew. All right. That is, I mean, I know there were a lot of different things people wanted to say. I apologize that I did not get to all of the questions within this 45-minute time frame. I apologize to the people over on the podcast who said they couldn't hear the audio. So it will be going up because I record the audio on a separate file. So you can check out, it a little bit later. And you have a great Women's History Month to women. Mom, do not be mad at me. I see you're sending me text messages. But yes, today was grown and sexy, but not grown and sexy for the mothers. All right. So you guys have a great one. All right.